In response to the increasing threats, our combatant commanders around the world have developed a seemingly insatiable demand for the unique capabilities of our special operators. That's especially true in the fight against terrorism. For the last 15 years, Special Operations Forces have been heavily engaged in the fight against global terrorist groups, and as a result, Socom's budget has emphasized optimizing and sustaining counterterrorism capabilities. This is unlikely to change anytime soon. The United States will remain engaged in global counterterrorism operations of varying scope and intensity for the foreseeable future, and Special Operations Forces will continue to play a vital role. But we must be careful never to equate special operations with counterterrorism. Special Operations Forces must be prepared to perform a variety of other critical missions beyond counterterrorism, missions that will continue to grow in scale and importance and demand more from our Special Operations Forces. Non-states like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are becoming more aggressive in challenging U.S. interests and partners through the use of asymmetric means that often fall below the threshold of conventional conflict. The ability of our special operators to conduct low-visibility special warfare operations in politically sensitive environments make them uniquely suited to counter the malign activities of our adversaries in this domain. Put simply, Special Operations Forces have an indispensable role to play in great power competitions and global counter-proliferation. The challenges posed by militarily advanced great powers will require the development and employment of new technologies and capabilities. It also warrants a serious review of the need for additional Special Operations Force structure. However, posturing the force to effectively operate in this domain will not be possible until we in Congress step up and repeal the misguided and disastrous defense spending caps and forthcoming defense budget cuts required by law in the Budget Control Act. Persistent budgetary uncertainty undermines the ability of our military leaders to plan and forces them to choose between near-term readiness to support ongoing operations and optimizing the force and its capabilities to address emerging and future requirements. This is not sustainable, and this is not right. I look to our witnesses to explain how Socom is attempting to balance the need to support ongoing operational warfighting requirements while also ensuring that the force is prepared to deal with emerging threats as well as describe in detail where budget shortfalls are forcing you to accept risk. Lastly, and most importantly, I expect our witnesses to provide the committee with an update on the overall health of the force and what is being done to mitigate the impact to our operators and their families. 15 years of continuous combat operations and back-to-back deployments have placed enormous strain on the force, challenging readiness, resilience, and retention. We owe our operators and their families who have given so much in defense of our nation the support that they deserve. Again, I thank our witnesses for being with us today and look forward to their testimony. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me also join you in thanking our witnesses for appearing today to discuss the United States Special Operations Command and the readiness of our Special Operations Forces. You are both ably leading your respective organizations through a period of both high operational tempo and also significant transition. The United States Special Operations Command, or SOCOM, recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of its establishment by Congress. Those 30 years, and particularly the last 15, have been characterized by great successes, including the operation that killed Osama bin Laden. SOCOM's history also includes tragedies that have resulted in the loss of brave special operators. Fortunately, our Special Operations Forces have learned from each of these events and have emerged as a stronger and more capable force. General Thomas, the high quality of men and women you lead today are a testament to that lineage. SOCOM is unique within the Department of Defense as the only functional combatant command with service-like responsibilities for the training, equipping, organization, and readiness of Special Operations Forces. When Congress created SOCOM, it also established the position of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict, or ASD SOLIC, to be the service secretary-like civilian tasked with day-to-day advocacy and oversight of Special Operations Forces. For many reasons, including competing responsibility for other policy matters, the ASD SOLIC has not adequately fulfilled the mandate to date. The National Defense Authorization Act of fiscal year 2017 sought to address this issue with a number of reforms designed to optimize the partnership between the commander of Socom and the ASD SOLIC for the benefit of Special Operations Forces. For that reason, we are pleased to have Ms. Whelan, the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense SOLIC, testifying today in the Service Secretary-like role envisioned by last year's reforms. We look forward to receiving an update from both of you as to the progress you've made towards achieving the goal of last year's bill and what we may expect over the next several years. Our Special Operations Forces remain heavily engaged in the fight against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other violent extremist organizations, sometimes directly, but more often in support of local partner forces on the ground, as we have seen most prominently in Iraq and Syria. I hope both of you will give us your assessment of what, if anything, we can do to accelerate progress in defeating these groups. While the last 15 years of Special Operations deployments have been primarily focused on countering violent extremist groups, there is growing realization that Special Operations Forces and the unique skill sets that they possess may be called upon for other missions as well. General Thomas, you and many in your community have sought to characterize this so-called gray zone of competition short of direct military conflict. We saw such tactics most notably as part of Russia's eventual illegal annexation of Crimea, and should expect more such challenges and adversaries as they pursue efforts against the United States and other countries. I hope that you'll provide the committee with your views on the suitability of special operations to address gray zone challenges today and what changes to special operations capabilities and authorities, many of which were designed to confront the terrorist threat, may be necessary. Given the demand for Special Operations Forces across these various mission sets, we must always remain mindful of the already high operational tempo faced by our special operators and their families. Socom has sought to mitigate the stress of these repeated and demanding deployments through the Preservation of the Force and Families Initiative. I look forward to an update on the lessons learned from this initiative and Socom's plans going forward. General Thomas and Ms. Whelan, I hope you will pass along the committee's admiration and thanks to our special operators and their families for the tremendous sacrifices they make in support of our national security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Whelan.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman McCain, Senator Reid, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to appear before you today in my capacity as the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict. I'm pleased to share the table with General Tony Thomas, who has served at the forefront of the Special Operations Forces at all levels of command. Our entire SOLIC team is proud to partner with him and his command in forging the future of DoD Special Operations. I would like to thank you and your predecessors for the foresight to create SOLIC and US Socom 30 years ago, and for your commitment to maintaining that vision over the last 3 decades. We are grateful for this committee's strong support for special operations, as evidenced by the resources, authorities, and depth of understanding you provide in your oversight. Our military is stronger and more capable due to your efforts. Today, I will focus on 3 topics: winning the current fight and defeating emerging threats, building on the foundations of Section 922 ASD SOLIC authorities, and continuing to hone the edge of SOF personnel and capabilities. SOF is a vanguard force, encountering emerging threats at the leading edge of the modern security landscape. In the last 15 years, we encountered a networked enemy. We flattened our organizations and accelerated our targeting cycles, and we built a network to defeat them. We now face advanced transregional threats that demand greater levels of coordination and collaboration, and we are redoubling our focus on building relationships and international and interagency partners. Today, SOLIC provides advocacy for the Special Operations budget, which is approximately 1.8% of our defense budget in 2017. And we directly manage over $2 billion in various budgets that support counterterrorism and counter-narcotics efforts. The 3-decades-long partnership between Socom and SOLIC has generated a force capable of dealing with emerging threats and a force that is able to translate those gains across the department. We will win the fight against VEOs and protect our citizens, vital interests, allies, and partners. This requires a long-term strategic approach that combats terrorists, disrupts terrorist networks, discredits extremist ideologies, and diminishes factors that contribute to recruitment and radicalization. Sustained funding and flexible legislative authorities have been instrumental to those efforts. I want to thank the committee for establishing Section 127E, formerly known as Section 1208, as a permanent authority. The maturation of this program has provided our warfighters a powerful tool to employ to support our allies, attack our enemies, and protect our force, and it is a great example of interagency synergy enabled by strong congressional support and oversight. Congressional support for countering threat finance and transnational organized crime is also crucial to our efforts. Terrorists, insurgents, and other threat networks depend upon illicit revenue streams and criminal facilitators for logistic support, money laundering, or obtaining weapons and fraudulent documents. Thank you also for codifying the responsibilities of ASD SOLIC's important oversight role, comprised of the complementary tasks of monitoring and advocacy in the FY17 NDAA. U.S. Socom has made dramatic advances during wartime in response to urgent battlefield demands, gains that require an institutional foundation to endure. The service secretary-like authorities in Section 922 serve as a strategic linchpin, ensuring that we lock in these hard-won gains. These authorities have empowered the Special Operations Policy Oversight Council, which we have used over the past year to resolve base infrastructure and casualty evacuation issues among SOCOM and the services. Ultimately, these gains can be leveraged across the entire force, with soft best practices in technology and talent management serving as templates for the department and in addressing emerging challenges. A key part of SOLIC's role is to advance the state of the art in concepts, technologies, and strategies for both humans and hardware. Our Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office leads this effort, with SOLIC developing cutting-edge technologies for SOF, the interagency, and law enforcement. The SOF truths state that humans are more important than hardware. As we continue to provide agile and innovative capabilities, we must also continue to build and sustain an elite workforce suited to the unique and diverse demands of 21st century warfare. We will also continue to work closely with Congress to ensure that we have the right policies, agile authorities, and necessary resources to employ SOF effectively. I thank Congress for its continuing support of our men and women in uniform and their families, and I look forward to your questions.
Chairman McCain, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm especially grateful to be here with Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Whelan in a session dedicated exclusively to special operations, as it provides us the opportunity to discuss in detail the unique requirements, capabilities, and challenges associated with your United States Special Operations Command. This body legislated us into existence a little over 30 years ago to act as a unique Department of Defense organization, a dual-hatted service-like entity responsible for the manning, training, and equipping of Special Operations Forces, as well as a globally focused functional combatant command. In fulfilling the first role, which continues to be our primary function, I believe we have consistently provided the world's best Special Operations Forces to the geographic combatant commanders. However, it is in the second role, as a globally focused combatant command, where SOCOM has evolved the most. As we carry out both of these roles today, Special Operations Forces are more relevant than ever to the current and enduring threats facing our nation. We have been at the forefront of national security operations for the past 3 decades, to include continuous combat over the past 15 and a half years. This historic period has been the backdrop for some of our greatest successes, as well as the source of our greatest challenge, which is the sustained readiness of this magnificent force. We are thankful for the resources you have provided not only to operate this force, but also to perform the critical sustainment efforts that underpin our most precious resource, our people. Last month was particularly difficult for United States Special Operations Command, losing its 407th hero, Staff Sergeant Dialankar, a father of 5, in a firefight in the Nangarhar province of Afghanistan while operating alongside his Afghan partners. Then last week, we lost Ranger Sergeants Thomas and Rogers, our 408th and 409th casualties, respectively. This comes on the heels of 16 other combat fatalities since I assumed command a year ago, and is a stark reminder that we are a command at war and will remain so for the foreseeable future. My current priorities for the command fall into three broad categories. First, we must win the current fight, which consists of carrying out assigned missions running the gamut from defeating Islamic extremism, both Sunni and Shia, to countering Russian aggression, to preparing for contingencies in Korea, as well as various security operations to defend the homeland. Second, we must continue to transform our enterprise to remain relevant in the rapidly changing security environment. Finally, we must take care of our people and their families as they form the foundation upon which our force is built. My first year in command has seen us focused on these priorities as we transform the way the Department of Defense looks at many of the national military strategy challenges in our role as the coordinating authority for countering trans-regional threats. More recently, we have also poured significant resources into defining our role as the Department's synchronizer for countering weapons of mass destruction. Both of these substantive roles are additive to the current missions where approximately 8,000 Special Operations Forces are deployed in over 80 countries, working with international, interagency, and DoD partners in support of the Geographic Combatant Commander's priorities. This focus is also occurring during a period of unprecedented recapitalization of substantive parts of our warfighting capability, to include the conversion of our entire C-130 fleet to J-model C-130s, as well as other major platforms. We are extremely thankful to the services for enabling this transformation of the force as it sets us on the path for success for decades to come. We are equally grateful to the support of Congress for the required resourcing that, in turn, has produced a Socom which is relevant to all the current and enduring threats facing the nation. We appreciate your continued oversight and advocacy for your United States Special Operations Command, and I look forward to your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you, General. General, how are the spending caps under the Budget Control Act impacting the readiness and capabilities of Special Operations Forces?
Chairman, that has been a consistent challenge over the last couple of years as two of the things that we would endeavor to control in terms of predictability, and that's the deployment tempo and the resourcing of our force. Resourcing has not been very predictable over the last several years, and the potential for continued cuts undermines both our readiness and our modernization going forward.
So what does that do to morale?
Chairman, indirectly, I think obviously it affects the morale of our service members who are concerned about the support of the nation and this body.
When it's not predictable as to where and when they will be required because of budget constraints. True?
Chairman, it's true. Yes, there's a ripple.
So how can you plan in this budgetary environment when we lurch from crisis to crisis? And I guess I'm a little redundant here, but when I look at this map here of where all of your people are all spread all over the world, it seems to me at least we owe them some kind of predictability. Let me ask, what's your assessment? Do you know when we'll see an updated counter-ISIS strategy from the administration?
Chairman, we are currently working on updating that strategy.
What's your assessment of Russia's malign activities aimed at destabilizing Eastern Europe and our NATO allies?
Chairman, as I think you know, we are supporting General Scaparotti's efforts to both discern and determine the nature of Russian aggression, as well as to compete short of conflict in the various countries where it occurs.
And have you seen the Russian malign activities increase, decrease, or stay the same?
Chairman, I would assess they're a steady state of aggressive activities.
And how do you think we deter that?
Chairman, I think by with and through our allies is the primary approach. I think we have great support and great opportunity there, and we're continuing to enhance that approach.
Has the European Reassurance Initiative had a positive impact?
It has, Chairman.
Do you think we're in a stalemate in Afghanistan? Unquote.
Chairman,
General Nicholson testified before this committee, and in light particularly of the recent successful, at least in their view, Taliban attacks, including the killing of over 100 Afghans at a base.
Chairman, I'm aware of General Mickelson's description of the current status of the fight as a stalemate. I recently returned from visiting Afghanistan where you know our Special Operations Forces play a key role with their associated forces. It is admittedly a very tough fight, and we're beginning yet another fighting season. I would offer, though, that in terms of stalemate, the one objective we had for why we went there in the first place that we've accomplished over the last 15.5 years is the avoidance of another attack from that area, and that certainly is an accomplishment and something that we need to reinforce going forward.
But if you've got a, quote, stalemate, that means that it doesn't end, doesn't it?
Chairman, I understood the commander's assessment of stalemate as an opportunity to change the strategy.
But that opportunity, if the present status quo prevails, then there's no end to it. In other words, what do you think needs to be done to end a stalemate?
Chairman, I think that General Nicholson and the Secretary are pursuing new initiatives to analyze.
What do you think is needed, General Thomas?
Chairman, we're integral to the discussion on what's needed going forward. Again, I'm supporting the commander there and supporting our Secretary of Defense in terms of the
You know, when you
strategy.
testified before this committee that you would give your opinion if it is requested by this committee. I'll ask you again. What do you think needs to be done in Afghanistan to end a stalemate?
Chairman, I think the critical factor is the commitment to some enduring state that has not been described effectively in the past. And I think the new strategy is going to establish that definition of what.
Does that mean, in your view, additional troops commitment?
Chairman, additional troops are being considered. Changes to the ROEs.
In your opinion, do you think it requires additional troops?
Chairman, right now, I think we have an adequate number of my troops, Special Operations Forces, on the ground.
Of your troops, you think you have enough?
I do.
And how often do your average individuals under your command serve overseas?
Chairman, I believe what you're getting at is the deployment tempo for our folks.
Right.
It varies across our force. In some cases, various parts of our force, various components are in a 1 to 1.2 worst case deployment.
Meaning how many months deployed versus how many months back in the United States?
With that ratio I just described, they are about a 1 to 1. So 6 months or so deployed, if that's the rotation, 6 months back. That's the worst case. In the best case, we are being able to establish a balance of 1 to 3. So for every 6 months deployed, 100.
Isn't it a significant strain to have half your time deployed? Doesn't that put a lot of strain on the individuals and their families?
Chairman, that worst case is actually under the DO. It is less than the DOD's desired rate, and we're endeavoring to get that back in balance. And again, that's not our entire formation. That's only parts of our formation, but it is unsustainable, to your point.
I thank you, General. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. To both Ms. Whelan and General Thomas says, do you believe that both Socom and SOLEC have an adequate seat at the table when discussions are made about budget acquisition and other issues impacting your force vis-a-vis the other services? Ms. Whelan?
Thanks for the question, Senator. I think that the recent language in the NDAA in Section 922 has significantly improved the ability of ASD SOLEC to gain a seat at the table. And to that point specifically, we recently used that language to justify getting a separate seat for ASD SOLEC on the Deputy Secretary's Management Action Group, which previously SOLEC did not have. We've also gained a separate seat for SOLEC on the Deputy Secretary's policy oversight, SAP policy oversight council. SOCOM has a number of special access programs that we previously had not been able to manage independently. Further, within the department, we have established a Tiger team to cross department-wide in order to determine other areas in which ASD SOLEC needs to gain additional authorities and abilities within the department to represent SOCOM and have a seat at the table. One other recent accomplishment is, I think, we will have a seat for SOCOM in the upcoming defense strategy development process.
General Thomas, any comments?
Senator, I would reinforce Theresa's points. We very much embrace the recent language that reinforces ASD Solic's role as our service, like entity. We are well represented at all the appropriate venues. It sometimes takes reminding that we are unique in that case because we are seen as either one or the other, and we sometimes have to remind folks that we are both a service-like entity and a combatant command. But you've empowered us to be at the table for all those venues, and we're adequately represented. Thank you.
Secretary Whelan, are there any responsibilities you have that you feel might be more effectively and efficiently carried out by another entity? You've got a broad range of responsibilities. Is there anything that should be repositioned?
Within ASD Solic, I think that there is consistency actually across the portfolio in terms of the types of activities that the Assistant Secretary is responsible for in terms of the Assistant Secretary's role in providing policy oversight. All of the activities that ASD Solic has purview over are in some way related to either the employment of soft forces or the environments in which soft forces operate. Whether they be soft MISO capabilities, civil affairs capabilities, foreign internal defense capabilities, training capabilities, and of course counterterrorism capabilities. The portfolio is consistent in that context.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm inaccurate, is that you also have responsibilities for information warfare?
Yes, Senator, information warfare does fall under the purview of ASD Solic.
But you don't have responsibility for cyber operations, and as we know, cyber operation, information warfare, on the other side, our adversaries seem to be merged together with each day.
Correct, Senator. That it is a seam. There are a lot of seams, as you well know, within our organizational structure, and it's difficult. If you eliminate one seam, you'll create another. So it's kind of a difficult balance to strike. One of the things that we have done, though, is Solic recently put out a strategy for operating in the information environment. This strategy impacts the entire department to include the cyber warriors in the department. And so we have an integrated interdepartmental approach to implementing that strategy. Right now, we're going through a capabilities-based assessment of that strategy to determine where we have additional needs and where we have seams that we need to fix in order to operate effectively.
Thank you. Just a final, very quick question. As the chairman's noted, we have threats that are not strictly counterterrorism today with this gray area of operations. Section 1208, which I think has been very useful as you've described it, is focused more on counterterrorism. Is there anything we have to do to give you that same degree of authority with respect to these gray areas and unconventional warfare rather than counterterrorism? General Thomas, your comments, and I have no time.
Senator, we're actively pursuing both the authorities and the resources that would enable more enhanced unconventional warfare operations. Again, we're very appreciative of what 1208 does for us, and that has actually made us very kind of enthusiastic that similar authorities, similar resourcing might be advantageous for the force and for the nation for unconventional warfare purposes, and look forward to having that continuing discussion with you and others.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to pursue this a little bit in terms of the response to the chairman's question in terms of the adequacy of the force. But I want to first mention your activity in Africa, which really surprised me. I can remember when we first brought AFRICOM along, and we started paying attention to what's going over there, the potential threats that are there, the terrorism that is infiltrating the countries. And so I know you've been active over there, and I've talked to a lot of the African leaders, very complimentary on some of the results that we're getting. But and this surprises me because AFRICOM didn't even come online until the 1st of 2008. And yet, if you go back to 2006, the deployments to Africa have increased by more than 1,600%, went from 1% to 17% in terms of deployments outside the United States. That's huge. That's a lot of increase in activity. And in addition to combating terrorism and expanding network of violent extremism organizations, General Thomas. What impact, what can you elaborate on your activities in Africa? It's a disordinate increase in terms of percentage when you realize that some 17% of all the deployments are actually affecting Africa.
Senator, I would actually attribute that to our adversaries' activities. The migration of ISIS and al-Qaeda to Africa, to ungoverned spaces over the preceding decade has been palpable. You know the specific locations. I probably in an open session should not get into the details of where and what, but we've endeavored to move where they have tried to establish new provinces, new areas of influence in support of General Waldhauser and AFRICOM. So that transition over time has really been driven by adversarial action, but I think the good news is that we've had the ability to move to those locations and attempt to defeat and disrupt them, where they try to reside.
I don't think anyone anticipated back in 2008 or even the years since then that the activity would increase as it has there. So I'm interested in following through with that. Now, on this, the idea of what you guys are in a position to handle right now, most of the deployed Socom forces, 55% went to the Middle East. Next was Africa, that was 17%, then Europe 13% and 9%. Now, when you look at the op-tempo that was involved over there, in your written testimony, you acknowledge that adversary powers are increasingly turning toward unconventional warfare and to pursue their objectives. But maybe I misunderstood you when you responded to the question of the chairman, that you are adequately staffed to carry on these functions. Is that not an accurate recollection I'm having?
Senator, we are adequately staffed to maintain the current tempo, the current distribution of Special Operations Forces. It is a strain. It's certainly not an easy burden, but we're adequately resourced.
I'm looking for the quote that we had. Yeah, this would have been from the House committee yesterday. You said, well, I can't find it right now, but there are quotes there. Here it is right here. It said, most Special Operations Forces units are employed to their sustainable limit. Now, to me, that seems a little inconsistent with being adequately staffed. And you went on to talk about as or more challenged is a conventional force by the problem of suicide, other problems in the ranks that come with what I consider to be overdeployed. What are some of the problems that you're facing that give you the indication that maybe you're not adequately staffed?
Senator, again, we can sustain the current rate of deployment. It's something we scrutinize every day. You mentioned, the chairman mentioned early on, that there is a large demand signal from our geographic combat commanders to do the things they have to do. As a service, one of our roles, we aim to meet their requirements. As a Global Combatant Command, we also attempt to synchronize special operations activity to the greatest efficacy possible. I think we're doing that to the degree we can. There are challenges on the force. You mentioned certainly some of the more dire symptoms, and we address them directly every day. That's a large focal point for us. I'd have to thank all of you as well for providing us the tools that we didn't have a decade ago to build in resiliency for our force in terms of our preservation of the force and family, and also for our ability to care for our warriors in the event of mishaps, injuries, et cetera. We didn't have that capability. You've helped us gain it over time, and that's a critical part of how we sustain ourselves.
Well, as one member of this committee, I look at some of the results, some of the problems that you have, and I have to question as to whether or not it is adequately staffed. One short question, I know my time has expired, but you can do this for the record if you'd like, Ms. Whelan. There's some confusion, as I mentioned to you earlier, in the words that you use when you're talking about adversary powers increasing, turning toward the unconventional warfare. You said, quote, exquisite integration across multiple components of not only the Defense Department, also the United States government as a key challenge to confronting growing threat. you might, for the record, since my time has expired, elaborate a little bit on that. Would you do that?
Yes, Senator, we'd be happy to.
Thank you very much.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank both of our witnesses for your service, and in particular, I'd like to thank the men and women that you lead in our armed services, both in the military and in the civilian side, and of course, particularly the Special Ops Command in the Pacific arena, who provide great support to the Asia-Pacific region. Secretary Whelan, guidelines for the use of force were established by President Obama in the 2013 Presidential Policy Guidance. The rules include the requirement for a, and I quote, near certainty, unquote, that the terrorist target was present and that no civilians would be injured or killed. There is no legal requirement that President Obama's successors adhere to the same rules. President Trump has recently directed you to advise him on any recommended changes to the rules of engagement. And there were reports that there were a large number of civilian casualties after the raid in the command in Yemen recently. Have the rules of engagement requirement of near certainty that no civilian casualties will result been modified for special ops missions?
Thanks for the question, Senator. Absolutely not.
Are there differences in the steps a conventional force would take versus special operations to prevent collateral civilian loss of life during missions?
Senator, I'll let General Thomas answer that question.
General Thomas?
Senator, no, is the answer. We both adhere to the law of armed conflict. There are different techniques in terms of how we develop targets, but the same absolute standard applies.
So these rules of engagement that requires near certainty that that your target is there and that you will minimize collateral damage, that was applied in the Yemen case?
Yes, the rules of engagement were not changed for the Yemen case.
And although there was a high number, we're told maybe 200 or so civilian casualties, that did not result in a review of what happened there?
There have been extensive reviews of what happened after action reports and lessons learned, but the casualties were not a result of a change in the rules of engagement.
What were they a result of?
They were a result of operational circumstances that the forces on the ground found themselves in.
I see. For General Thomas, in your testimony, you identify SoftWorks as a Socom initiative to support agile acquisition with appropriate venues. This is an open collaboration facility in Florida that has been in operation for over a year and has successfully brought hundreds of non-traditional partners together to work on your most challenging problems. I think that's a really good idea. Although we have a lot of innovators and idea folks all over the country, also in Hawaii, how do you search for ideas, collaborators, and solution outside of your SoftWorks construct, I should say?
Senator, you actually teased out the bigger part of the problem. I have the luxury of commanding 70,000 of the best, of the most creative problem solvers in the world, and how I marry them up with the absolute innovation that is everywhere in terms of industrial approaches is the real challenge. But SoftWorks is one way we're doing that, where we're compressing the space between academia, innovators, businessmen, and our operators in the pursuit of very specific problems. So you might imagine the whole gamut of initiatives that we're endeavoring to accomplish there that are enabling our force. But we're able to do that, and then to go into rapid fielding and kind of accelerated fielding of capabilities that enable our force. So a relatively new initiative, SoftWorks, about a year and a half old, but also already paying some huge dividends for us.
So based on your experience so far with SoftWorks, would you recommend that something like this, maybe a physical location for PACOM or other commands?
Senator, the Defense Department is actually endeavoring to do this at a number of different locations. Secretary Carter certainly invested in the Valley. There's other initiatives around the United States tapping into the various laboratories and academic facilities. I can't speak to where the department's going in terms of the Pacific and where we might invest out there, but I'm sure we're interested wherever we can tap into that kind of innovative capability.
I hope you all would take a look at spreading the opportunity around, because there are a lot of small businesses all over the country who could provide the kind of innovation that you're seeking. The Pentagon has acknowledged more than 100 U.S. Special Operations Forces are operating with Iraqi units in and around Mosul, with upwards of 600 more playing a support role in staging bases farther from the front line. So can you, this is for General Thomas, can you comment on the seemingly ever-increasing use of Special Operation Forces, and do you think we're relying too heavily on Special Ops?
Secretary, first and foremost, we're not a panacea. We are not the ultimate solution for every problem, and you will not hear that coming from us. That's been misconstrued in some of the media circles. Everything we are doing is in concert with conventional forces, with our allies, completely integrated. I just visited Mosul. I was there about 3 weeks ago. Mosul was my hometown for 15 months from 2007 to 2008, so I'm very familiar with how daunting that challenge is. In that area, you have a mix of conventional forces. I met with a brigade commander, from the Army who was there. We had our foreign special operations forces and our forces all integrated with the Iraqis, who are doing the majority of the fighting and incurring most of the casualties there. So it is an absolute blend of all of our forces, and I think the right mix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you both. Let's talk about collaboration with your international counterparts. Which one of you would like to discuss the extent to which we collaborate with our international allies? General?
Senator, in a word, extensively. At almost every part of our formation, you'll see where we're endeavoring to bring everyone in who has a part of the problem. I'm very appreciative that the Director of National Intelligence has enabled us to crush through pre-existing prohibitions for information sharing, probably one of the most powerful things we have in this day and age, to be able to share exquisite information that the United States has that we may or may not be intent on acting on, but be able to share that with our allies and enable them to act. But that's at almost every point of our formation where that level of collaboration is ongoing right now. So exquisite is the best way I can describe the extent of the collaboration and getting better every day.
Is there anything else you need in the next NDAA to help you there? You got what you need?
Senator, I believe we certainly have no restrictions that I could mention to you or that I could specify to you right now. So we feel very enabled there. And as I mentioned, the intelligence community is finding ways to enable us more every day. Certainly with the concerns of safeguarding methods and sources and things like that, but with a lean towards sharing and collaborating more than we've ever done before.
I understand you have a particularly strong relationship with our neighbors to the north in Canada.
Phenomenal relationship, yes, Senator.
What can you tell us in this non-classified setting about exercise Vital Archer?
Secretary, Senator, rather hard to go into detail about that exercise, which we recently completed, as I think you know. But it's part of a cycle, if you will, to ensure our interoperability with our neighbors, with one of our greatest partners, for a very specific mission set that's of critical interest to both Canada and us.
Let me shift then to special boats and just say, first of all, that we in Mississippi are thankful and honored to have Special Boat Team 22 headquartered in our state. Would you describe the ways in which these special boat teams contribute to different missions?
Senator, I recently had the privilege of running all over Stennis here about a month ago and getting out on the water and some of those capabilities. They are integral to many of our activities around the globe. NAV Ski Yachts, the institution that you have there as well, is also a critical enabler for many of our foreign allies. So again, two phenomenal aspects of our portfolio that are important to everything we're doing.
So we're continuing to do a lot of significant work in riverine environments.
Where it applies, Senator, we certainly have that capability and we continue to improve it.
And where does that apply?
Senator, on several locations on the globe that I probably would best address in a closed hearing.
Okay, and let me just say, to follow up on the chairman's line of questioning about Afghanistan, I just think it's very important for you to know and for everyone listening to know that we need to move beyond anything that puts us at a stalemate in Afghanistan. This is an important fight that we need to win, and there's every reason that we should be able to do that. We have a populace in Afghanistan who supports our presence there. The overwhelming majority of the ethnic groups, of the tribes, appreciate what we stand for and look to the United States for leadership. So to the extent that you, either of you, both of you, can give us correct and helpful information about how to move past what some people have described as a stalemate, to me is very, very helpful. Ms. Whelan?
Senator, I think we are actually actively looking at adjustments to the approach in Afghanistan right now. I expect that these proposals will go to the President within the next week. And the intent is to do just that, to move beyond the stalemate, and also to recognize that Afghanistan is a very important partner for the United States in a very tricky region. And we want to maintain that partnership with Afghanistan, and we want to ensure that Afghanistan reaches its potential. So that's the objective of the strategy, sir.
That's very good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you both for being here, and please pass along our gratitude to everyone who serves under your command. I think you have an enormous amount of the work they do every day has an enormous amount of respect from all of our constituents, and we should be very grateful for that. General Thomas, yesterday, I want to thank you for just sitting down with me in my office, and you and I discussed a number of things, but the high operational tempo is one of the things we touched on, and one of the things you mentioned to me that really stuck in my head as a number is that you also indicated that now somewhere between 28, I think, and 30% of your funding is now from war supplemental or OCO funding versus 7% across the other military services. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what that means in terms of that budgetary over-reliance on OCO and how that impacts your ability to plan and execute your mission.
Senator, thanks for the question. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss a number of issues with you in more detail yesterday. We monitor closely. I mentioned the two things that I look to that pressurize us most is unpredictable depth tempo, and certainly there are aspects of that are affecting our force, and resourcing, the predictability or not of resourcing, which has been challenging over time. We are monitoring very closely the budget discussions. We're inherent to it, or we're integral to all those budget discussions. And truthfully, I'm somewhat sanguine that we will get the resources required to continue to pursue the tempo and the effects that we're producing right now. You pointed out my one concern is that we have trended to be much more dependent on operational contingency funds than anybody else in DoD. So the current budget would push us.
If your overall budget were held flat in either, would you rather have that in base budget, or would you rather see it over in the OCO?
Senator, I hope that we will be able to get consideration to move that into the base over time. Again, I've talked with Secretary Mattis, so I don't want to be appearing inconsistent. The department is not pushing that as aggressively for the remainder of other services because they're only leveraged to OCO to about a 7% degree. Yeah. We are 30%, or near 30% right now, and so that's some risk that we'd certainly like to mitigate over time.
You know, one of the other things we mentioned and talked a little bit about is the contributions out at Cannon Air Force Base. Would you take a moment and talk a little bit about the importance of the RPA contribution that happens there? Do you have concerns with regard to operational tempo? We've made huge investments in that facility over the years because of the growing mission, but obviously the tempo has been incredible.
Senator, I think this committee is very aware that ISR is a significant portion of our portfolio, to the tune of about 1/5 of our investment strategy on a given annual basis. It runs the gamut from tactical ISR all the way to high-end ISR that our Air Force component produces, which is the best in the world. It's as good as, it's better than anything on the planet. You know, Cannon plays a critical role in terms of the basing and training of that ISR capability, both manned and unmanned. And then the range complex there allows us to work it every night. So again, state-of-the-art ISR capability produced by our Air Force and others that we leverage on a consistent basis.
I also want to commend SOCOM's interest in pursuing what General Goldfein called or described as silent sabotage with regard to directed energy. And an airborne high-energy laser on a C-130 gunship could certainly deliver a number of capabilities before and during clandestine ground operations. Do you want to share any thoughts you have on how directed energy might contribute to your future mission and how SOCOM's plans for developing that system are coming along?
Senator, as we discussed yesterday, we see a number of applications for high-energy weapons capabilities. So we're interested from a number of approaches. You mentioned that we have offered to base it on one of our platforms as a test basis that was relatively easy for us to offer up, and obviously gives us kind of an immediate developmental capability. So again, very interested. Not exclusively a SOCOM pursuit.
Right. You feel good about Air Force's willingness to put skin in that game as well?
I do. We have a phenomenal relationship with General Goldfein and the Air Force. We have actual annual service talks with all the services to talk through how we can crush through our combined equities, and the relationship with our sister services is phenomenal. I have no concerns.
My time has expired here, but I also want to express a willingness to work with you on the 1208-like issues with regard to unconventional warfare. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Ms. Whelan and General Thomas, thank you so much for being with us today. And as a soldier and a citizen, I want to thank you very much for your relentless work on the battlefield. And as the spouse of a former SOF operator, I want to thank you for SOCOM's dedication to the health and wellness of those operators, and especially the commitment that you have to those service members' families. So thank you very much for being here. General Thomas, during your confirmation hearing, we spoke about SOCOM's preservation of the force and family, POTFF initiatives. And as you know, I'm glad to see that SOCOM has done a lot in those areas to help our special operations warriors and their family members. And the wounded warriors especially is an interest of mine, and I would encourage everybody on this committee to take a look at those programs and learn more about them. Can you give us just a brief update on POTFF and specifically on Thor 3, which I had the opportunity to do PT at a Thor 3 facility with some of your operators. It was an experience. And can you tell us if SOCOM has the support it needs from Congress for these types of programs?
Senator, thanks for the question, and thanks more specifically for your personal support for this critical capability. It is admittedly an awkward acronym, POTFF, Preservation of the Force and Family, but it captures the essence of what we're trying to enable. Focused on both our force and arguably something that we talked about but didn't have the resourcing before, the readiness and the preservation of our families. It literally builds in or enables us to build in resilience prior to and in preparation for potential deployment for both our service members and our family members across a broad array of approaches, psychological, physical, spiritual, that again, it has played huge dividends for us. You mentioned a specific aspect of that that adheres or pertains mostly to the physical maintenance and the physical recovery of our force. But over time, this committee and the Congress has enabled us to put the right infrastructure in place with the right technicians, therapists and psychologists, et cetera, to provide state-of-the-art, as good as anything on the planet, sustainment capability for our individual operators, our individual service members, and their families. And as Command Sergeant Major Pat McCauley and I go around the formation, we get nothing but rave reviews from the force. In some cases, in fact, the challenge force is in some of our most distant locations where smaller forces they're looking for the same capability, and we're finding ways to parlay that to them as well, as opposed to just at the larger special operations installations.
Outstanding. It is a great program. Thank you, sir, for being so supportive of that. And it's not surprising that so many of our SOF warriors, even after injury, are able to get back into that fight. And while I was at Thor 3 with a dear friend of mine from Iowa, we met another one of his teammates who had also been injured, and he had a near at the hip amputation and had a prosthetic. He has been able to return to the fight because of those facilities, but he has been back to Afghanistan a number of times. But we also have those warriors that are not able to deploy again. So what is SOCOM doing to utilize their talents and abilities even after injury if they can't deploy? And are there things that we should look at as Congress to enable those warriors to stay on duty?
Senator, you touched on one of the unique challenges that we have is that most of our service members, even despite extraordinary wounds, debilitating wounds for any other, any other human being, desire greatly to continue serving. So you highlighted one example. I could highlight dozens where we've been able to accommodate individuals to stay in the force and to continue to contribute. Some, you mentioned an amputee. We have amputees that are operating as operators, frontline operators, special forces, SEALs, across the tip of the spear, all the way through to all of our supporting functions. So again, our goal is if they want to continue serving, we find a way to enable that, and you've given us the wherewithal, the committee's given us the wherewithal to be able to do that through our warrior care program.
Very good. I appreciate that very much. And I do have a few other questions. We'll get to those. Just a quick yes or no, though. President Trump today is saying that he does support leaving troops in Iraq in the fight against ISIS. Is that something that you would support?
Senator, I support the strategy. So whatever the nature of the special operations support required to attain our objectives, I'm supportive.
Okay, Ms. Whelan.
Yes, actually, we are totally linked, and the strategy is based on the requirements of the generals on the ground.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. I have a concern and a question. So on the concern side, on your website, on the SOCOM's website, you have SOF truths, soft truths, 5 of them, and one of them is most special operations require non-SOF assistance and non-SOF assistance. That seems pretty obvious. I have a concern about what I worry is sort of a growing SOF myth, and that is you can do special forces and have special forces and nothing else to accomplish your goals. Even conversations in this body sometime are, well, we don't want to use ground troops, we don't want to use, no boots on the ground, no combat troops, but it's okay to use special forces. And I sometimes think that's a little bit of not really a military calculation, but kind of more of a political one, that ground troops are a little more notable, special forces tend to be a little more covert, and so we can do things with special forces and not really have to be kind of accountable for it to the public. Am I right to worry about that?
Senator, I think you're right to worry about the perception, and it's something we battle all the time. There's been too many books and movies and publications that might imply that we go it alone, do it alone, and that's completely incorrect. So certainly, I share your concern that that's out there, but it's something that we push back on all the time. It's just not the case.
Question, Senator Wicker asked you about collaboration with international partners. I want to focus on a piece of that, the training that you do. I think one of the best parts of our DoD budget, and it's a very small part of the budget, is the training work we do with other nations, either bringing military leaders of other nations here or doing training with countries all over the world. Senator King and I have done some traveling and have seen special forces, U.S. Special Forces, doing training in some tough parts of the world that are pretty impressive. Without saying anything in an open setting that you shouldn't, talk a little bit about the scope of the training activities that our special forces are involved in with partners all over the world.
Senator, we are consistently trying to align ourselves with the appropriate partner forces where our national interests pertain, in the interest of building their capability to the range of missions that they might be required to do. I think we are pursuing a much more enlightened training approach all the way through security force assistance, Where I think my fellow combatant commanders would tell you that we're probably not keeping pace is in terms of the bureaucracy that pertains to foreign military sales and things of that ilk. So, and I know we're trying to get those to be as coherent as possible going forward. That would help us. But I think we are doing a much better job of identifying partner forces ahead of time that need various capabilities, and then we are pressing to make sure they have that capability.
And this training, when you do it, it's not only about just the sheer military capacity building, it's also about rules of war and human rights and, elevating professional standards in these militaries around the world, and that's all for the good.
Senator, you're nailing what I think is one of the critical aspects of it. It's literally imparting our American values to them in the means of a military-to-military relationship. Too often, in my mind, the first bill payer is that military-to-military relationship when we have missteps, and we are the first to address it. If we even get a scent of extrajudicial killings or inappropriate behavior, we address that immediately, with the respective element. But we are attempting to bring their understanding of what we believe is the right way to conduct combat operations along as part of our training.
One of the most important things I think we can do is kind of be the partner of choice as other nations are looking to build capacity, and I think there's probably no area more than Special Forces where we're really seen as a partner of choice by nations all around the world. It's a great way to build relationships, improve capacity, compliance with the rule of law. So I commend you on that. Look forward to talking about that more as we get into working on the NDAA together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Whelan, General. Thanks for your testimony. General, appreciated the opportunity to meet with you and your team yesterday. I wanted to follow up on some of our discussions. There's obviously we focus a lot here on ISIS and Al-Qaeda and some of the other terrorist groups. But certainly one of your most important missions is the counter-WMD mission. And as the threat is growing from North Korea, Iran, it's not just a direct threat. As you know, it's a proliferation threat. And I think that's going to be an enduring mission for you and your team and the SOF Command for decades. So in the 2016, in the Unified Campaign Plan, it was amended to transfer responsibility from STRATCOM to SOCOM for the synchronization of DoD's global counter-WMD strategy. To the extent you can discuss it in an open hearing like this, what are the things that we can do to support that critically important mission in terms of resources? How is the transfer going? And are there any other things that this committee should be aware of to help you most effectively focus and undertake that critical mission?
Senator, thanks for the question, and thanks for the time yesterday as well. As you mentioned, this is an enormous and incredibly important mission set that we accept responsibility for in January. So January of this year was when it was officially assigned to us from the Department of Defense. We've had about 4 months to work our enhanced appreciation for all that it entails. Obviously, we had studied ahead of time, but there's nothing like embracing a mission to really to understand it. We've had a chance to do our first of what is a semi-annual synchronization session with all the interagency partners that are part of this problem set, all the geographic combatant commanders, our international partners. A really valuable session that we again conduct semi-annually. And we're currently now trying to confederate all the ongoing activities so that we can provide the Secretary an assessment here. I'm aiming for the August timeframe to give him a comprehensive assessment of where we are in terms of the United States government policies and objectives for countering weapons of mass destruction, where we are from a DoD approach, and relative to both our interagency and our international partners. So again, we are leaning into this mission as aggressively as we do most everything at SOCOM, but it's obviously much bigger than us.
Yeah.
And we are honored to have that coordinating role for the Department of Defense, and we're endeavoring to provide the best product possible for the Secretary and the Department.
Well, as you undertake that analysis and that transfer of authority over to you, which has already happened, please make sure that this committee, I can almost guarantee you that you would get bipartisan support for additional responsibilities or resources that you'll need with regard to that critical mission. So please keep us posted. Let me ask, it's kind of related to Senator McCain's and Senator King's question. You know, we seem to have, in some ways, adopted a strategy of fighting our wars now with the combination of Socom forces and air power. But in your professional military opinion, what other capabilities would be beneficial to help our forces and our country bring success in places like Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan? I know you're looking at that issue, but there is kind of this, and I think it's a theme here, you're hearing a bit of a myth that, hey, once the Socom men and women are on it, everything is good to go, but we know that there's a lot of other capabilities and other forces that need to bring to bear. Specifically, what do you see as most important in terms of other capabilities supporting or even in the lead?
Senator, it's kind of ironic. I'm running through my brain right now, 80 different countries, 8,000 Special Operations Forces forward deployed, and I can't think of a single circumstance where we're not dependent on another service, another supporting function out there. Not one. If and when it's been described as Special Operations Forces by themselves, it's a misconception. Now, unfortunately, in some cases, we're too prominent because it's interesting. It's, again, the stuff of too many books and movies, but we're not doing anything by ourselves. The good news is, as we go into a problem, as we Special Operations go into a problem, I consider the entirety of the DoD inventory at our disposal, and vice versa. And that's the I think the benefit of the joint force approach, that we don't feel constrained, that there's nothing that's available in the DoD arsenal that we can't leverage, and they look at us in the same fashion. So again, that's happening about anywhere I can imagine, anywhere I've been lately, without any shortcomings.
So you're integrated, for example, with Marines or doing artillery fire missions with you in Iraq right now?
I think I mentioned to you, I won't get into specifics, but I just visited some Marines that were shooting more 155 ammo than I can supply them right now, and they are integral to everything we're doing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Whelan, I couldn't help notice your former title of Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations Low Intensity Conflict. When I was a junior staff member in this body 40 years ago, I once called OMB for an administration witness, and they gave me a title. He said, "I'm sending you so-and-so as the Principal Deputy." And I said, "I don't know these titles. What does that mean?" The fellow gave me an answer, which if I ever write a book about Washington, it will be the title of my book. The answer was, "He's at the highest level where they still know anything." And I just want you to know that you're at that level, and I'm now above it. So I've never forgotten that. General Thomas, there's been a lot of talk about tempo. Let me go back to the left about tempo and talk about retention, recruitment, and throughput. Do you have adequate people in the pipeline to maintain the tempo that you're at today?
Senator, again, something that we look at incredibly closely every day. The answer is we are having some challenges for portions of the force for recruitment. I can attribute some in terms of Army Special Operations Forces to the downsizing of the Army, partly for some internal challenges that I think we've rectified, but in some cases we've had some challenges. I think we're trending in the right direction now, though, going forward. But we had some temporary challenges over the last couple of years.
Well, I certainly hope that you'll let the committee know about those issues, and if there are recruitment and retention issues that our actions here can help to alleviate, we certainly want to do that.
Will do, Senator.
Ms. Whelan, the command and control is an issue that is of some concern. Do you believe that we have effective command and control of the Special Operations Forces? I'm concerned about interested parties. Your command, geographic combatant commander, service components, all receive and share information in a quick and efficient manner. Talk to me about command and control.
Sir, and I'll actually also let General Thomas comment on this as well. But I think from our perspective in the SOLIC oversight role, we actually have excellent command and control. In fact, I think the the integration of our forces between Socom and the combatant commands that they support, the regional combatant commands.
So if there's an action of Special Operations Forces in a particular geographic area, the combatant commands are integrated into they know what's going on.
Well, actually, Senator, the way it works is that Socom forces, the SOF forces actually fall under the command of the combatant commander, the geographic combatant commander. So the GCC is fully in charge of the operations that take place in their AOR. For example, if you're looking at the CENTCOM AOR right now, General Votel and his subordinate commanders that is the chain of command that operates all of the forces that are in that AOR right now, to include Special Operations Forces. There are not necessarily for this forum, but there are some specific elements that operate under a slightly different chain of command, although still under General Votel's purview, but with more direct access to General Votel that belong to General Thomas. But there is total integration, and nothing happens in a geographic commander's AOR that he does not know about.
General Thomas, you're comfortable with the structure?
Senator, absolutely comfortable. I'd reemphasize Theresa's point. There are no special operations in the world right now that are not under the command and control of a geographic combatant commander. There are provisions for exceptions when, in some scenarios, and truthfully, the exceptions are single digits over the course of our history, where SOCOM could be the supported commander. But day in, day out, all of our operations right now are under the control of a geographic combatant commander. I have combatant command of all Special Operations Forces, and I apportion them to the respective
So there's always coordination with the combatant command?
Always, constant, incessant. And where we actually, Senator, our role for synchronizing is where these geographic combatant commanders get to their prescribed limits. So you might imagine for CENTCOM, for instance, as they butt or as their borders literally butt up to other geographic combatant commanders, Syria to Turkey, Yemen to Somalia, Egypt to Libya, that's where we play a critical function of synchronizing special operations activities across those respective geographic combatant commanders. Again, they fight the forces. We provide a trans-regional perspective and role.
Ms. Whelan, my time is just about, or it is up, but very quickly, you mentioned information warfare. What does that consist of?
So information warfare is a sort of complex set of functions that include some of our military information support teams, as well as some of our communications specialties. So there is a whole list. I know you're short on time, Senator, if you'd like.
Perhaps you could, for the record, give us a definition of what that is consists of.
We'll take that for the record.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you both for coming today. General Thomas, thank you in particular for your service and all the men and women underneath your command. Over the last 8 years, there's been some tension between civilian and uniformed services over the number of flag officers that we've seen grow in all the services. This committee made an effort to reduce the number of flag officers last year. I've heard some generals and admirals, though, say that when the civilian command authorities reserve decision-making power to the highest levels, decision-making power that was once delegated to colonels and captains and, heaven forbid, even lieutenants on the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan in the last decade, then we should expect to see an increase in the number of flag officers. Have we begun to see in the last 4 months more delegation of operational decision-making authority back to where I suggest it belongs in the hands of commanders who are on the front lines?
Senator, the short answer is yes. I'm a little bit humored by how you describe the situation, and that my youngest son, who just gave up company command the 82nd, recently wrote to me and said, "Since when did we stop letting company commanders command companies?" And my response to him was, "Michael, that question has been asked since time immemorial. Where and how are you restricted right now?" But I think to your overall point, that while certain authorities had been elevated to very senior levels, I typically ask our force, are you empowered at the right level with the right ROE to do your job? And I think it's trending in that direction.
as that delegation occurs, do you think we might see a concomitant decline in the number of flag officers in the Pentagon who need to make those decisions for our company and field grade officers in the field?
Senator, I would tell you truthfully, flag officers in the Pentagon are not empowered to make those decisions because they're not in the chain of command. So I think the right folks in the chain of command are being empowered to make the decisions that you certainly experienced from your time in combat. We are going back in that direction, positively.
On a related note, last month we deployed the massive ordnance air blast in Afghanistan for the first time. There was some media controversy about that, about why that bomb was deployed. At what decision would something like that be made?
Senator, I think as it was described, that decision was in General Nicholson's authority. So he had the capability, he had the discretion of decision-making to employ it. I think we used it as an aerial denial weapon in an area that we'd been having a protracted fight with ISIS in the Khorasan in Nangarhar province in Afghanistan. So I think it was the right employment of a weapon system that avoided more extensive loss of life. I mentioned Sergeant Dialankar and our 2 Rangers who died out in that area recently. So again, that decision-making authority was at General Nicholson.
The commander in Afghanistan.
The commander on the
not the chairman or the Secretary of Defense or the National Security Advisor or the President?
No.
And that in deciding what kind of ordinance to employ, would you say that's a decision for commanders in the field to make?
I believe it is. Yeah.
And they don't need to get approval from anyone 8,000 miles away in Washington?
I think that could actually cause great risk to the force if it had to go back that way.
I hope all the rest of our bombs are overcoming the loss of their mother. Are they?
I think they're over their grieving.
Good. Another question I want to raise is the relationship between Special Operations Forces and conventional forces. By definition, Special Operations Forces are special. They do amazing things, but they're limited in numbers and focused in mission. Would you agree that you can't simply flood Special Operations Forces and expect them to be a substitute for what our conventional forces or what a broader strategy would do?
Senator, agree, and more pragmatically, we don't have the forces, the Special Operations Forces, to do that. So it's not a viable solution.
So Special Operations Forces are a important complement to conventional forces and a broader strategy, but they cannot be a substitute for either.
Agree, Senator.
A related question, does that mean that if we expect to increase the number of Special Operations Forces or the mission sets that we provide them or the operational tempo at which we deploy them, we will also need to see a concomitant increase in the number of conventional forces as well to support those missions?
I think that's a good assumption, Senator.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses here today for your insightful testimony. General Thomas, I'd like to go back to something you brought up in your testimony as well as to a question earlier from a panelist, and that's the SoftWorks effort that is undergoing right now to bring together academia and industry and some high-tech work. And as you know as well as anyone, the nature of warfare is going to change dramatically in the years ahead. Technology focus will be greater than ever. And in the past, the military has always been a leader in that area and will continue to do that. But one difference is that what we're seeing now in the civilian industry is accelerating in terms of new innovations. We have in Michigan TARDAC, which is the Army's Tank and Vehicle Research Lab, which is also working on the model that you have mentioned. But I was just curious, I know your effort's only about a year and a half old now, but what would you consider the major takeaway of that effort in the last year and a half, or perhaps a lesson that you have learned in that year and a half that's going to be instructive for entities like TARDAC and others to emulate?
Senator, I probably could, on the record, provide you a list of initiatives that have actually resulted in fielding capabilities to our forces. Some very specific dividends that have come out of that environment. And truthfully, our Director of Acquisition Technology and Logistics is leveraging that platform every day. So as, for instance, the counter unmanned aerial systems challenge that cropped up recently in Iraq and Syria, which was relatively nuanced, we were able to pour some very directed resources at that, have what he calls a collision of academia, technicians, operators come together for that problem, among others, to really crash on it in a hurry, and more importantly, leverage off-the-shelf technologies, things that would otherwise take an inordinate amount of time to get to the field. So if I can, I'd like to provide you a list of specifics, both what we've accomplished and more importantly, what we're endeavoring to do going in the future.
Well, I'd appreciate that. I'd also like to do a deeper dive, perhaps with some folks there, talk specifically about some of the work that they're doing and how we can replicate that in other places, because I think this is critically important for the future warfare.
Yep.
And as you know, and you've alluded to it in your answer there, that autonomy and robotics will probably have some of the greatest potential to change how we conduct warfare. In fact, I was struck that last week the Marine Corps conducted an exercise at Camp Pendleton on the future of amphibious warfare, which included using robots as the first boots on the ground, resupplying troops with drones, and even robots providing covering fire for those Marines. So in general, how do you see autonomy and robotics changing battlefield tactics in some of your operations? And it appears that this is coming a lot quicker than folks may have anticipated.
Senator, I'd like to think we're at the forefront or riding all the initiatives that pertain to that. As you might imagine, our mission set, especially our direct action mission set, entails an element of risk that we're trying to mitigate for literally the number one man in a formation that could absolutely be mitigated through robotics and other kind of sensory improvements over time. So we're pursuing that actively. I was going to ask if your time allows, that maybe we can get you to come visit in Tampa. We have had several visitors come in and actually provide us other opportunities to connect, with academic and industry on to some of the other activities that you mentioned.
I would appreciate that opportunity. What do you consider some of the main benefits and trade-offs that we need to consider as this technology moves forward?
Right now, it's a practical a challenge for us because, as you might imagine, we have tried to push the application of robotics where just the agility, both in terms of sensory capability, decision making, and physical capabilities of robotics, just are not there yet. But nonetheless, we're pushing in that regard. But we see some great opportunities.
All right, thank you, General. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, welcome. Thank you both for your service to our nation, particularly at this perilous time. General Thomas, in recent months, Special Operations Forces from across the services have made the ultimate sacrifices in conflicts around the world. Most recently, a number of brave special operators lost their lives fighting ISIS in northeastern Afghanistan. The reduction in conventional forces in Afghanistan and the closure of a majority of combat outposts and forward operating bases in the country has left a considerable gap in U.S. presence in critical enemy engagement areas. Would Special Operations Forces in Afghanistan be better supported if there were a greater presence of conventional soldiers in combat outposts and forward operating bases throughout the country?
Senator, I think General Nicholson and others are looking at enhancing the capability in terms of train, advise, and assist. So more conventional forces that would thicken the ability to advise and assist Afghan forces. That would absolutely be to our benefit. Right now, you mentioned the casualties that we recently incurred. Those are accompanied operations. That's where our Special Operations Forces are accompanying Afghan Special Operations capabilities. Ultimately, we want to make them capable of doing it on their own, and we're certainly making some progress there. But I think parallel efforts to advise and assist the larger conventional capabilities of the Afghan forces would absolutely enhance the effort.
Do the Special Operations Forces have the dedicated assets and resources that they need to fight and win, given so many competing areas of conflict around the world? And are you ever put into a position where you're forced to choose which mission to fully support and what can be accomplished with less dedicated assets?
Senator, to answer your first question, I do think we have adequate resources to task. The bigger challenge, as was kind of prefaced by the chairman at the beginning, is that from a DoD standpoint, we're a microcosm of the DoD from a global approach in that we're trying to provide the necessary special operations requirements to all the geographic combat commanders at the same time with a relative prioritization. The Secretary and the Chairman are endeavoring to make sure that prioritization is as precise as it needs to be for us as service components so that we can support the effort in priority. But it is a challenge. We, like the department, are trying to do a lot of things at the same time, and you know, in a challenging world, and so that's got some inherent friction to it.
On a different topic, I understand that the decision regarding which combatant command would be responsible for weapons of mass destruction has been decided, and that starting in January, it now falls under your command at the Special Operations Command. This is obviously a critical component of our nation's nuclear deterrent and counter WMD programs that have a major responsibility, including nuclear, chemical, and biological agents. Could you please comment on how the addition of WMD responsibility has affected current and future operations?
Senator, I mentioned previously that we absolutely embrace the enormity of this mission, and it is much, much bigger than Special Operations and SOCOM. We're looking to leverage as much of the rest of the interagency community and our international partners to accomplish our government's objectives in this regard as we can. Right now, we have the resourcing required to embrace this set, and we're in discussion for what we need going forward. I mentioned earlier that I'd hope to provide an assessment to our Secretary of Defense in August in terms of a comprehensive review of what we're trying to accomplish from a U.S. government policy and strategy objective and how well we're doing. Again, we look forward to providing that to the committee as well once we brief the Secretary.
Ms. Whelan, do you have additional thoughts on the impact of WMD responsibility under SOCOM?
Senator, thanks for the question. I think we fully supported the decision to shift the responsibility to SOCOM. The SOCOM has the capabilities that we were intended to utilize to address this issue. So I think organizationally it made a tremendous amount of sense to us to move it from STRATCOM to SOCOM, so we fully support.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. I just want to quickly ask about the importance of our non-military agencies and programs to your mission. For much of the past decade, Special Operations Forces have deployed around the globe 24/7, and we often think of them as conducting raids and taking out terrorists. But I understand that a big part of your mission is actually to advise and assist local forces to build their own capacity. General, how important is our State Department to that mission?
Senator, the relationship with the State Department is indescribably critical, both at the State Department level, but I would offer, as I mentioned earlier, we're in 80 different countries, and we look to have the most enhanced relationships possible with every one of those countries through our country team. If that's not the baseline for our United States government approach, then we are flawed from the start.
Great. So at the national level and at the country level. And would a reduction in funding to the state and USID that conduct foreign assistance and diplomacy make your job easier or make your job harder?
Senator, as you're implying, it makes their job harder, which I think by extension would make our job harder. So I can't calculate the specific cost, but I know that an already strained State Department would be more pressed to do their job.
Good, thank you. It's very helpful. You know, the administration is seeking significant reduction in the State Department and USAID budgets. Diplomacy and development are critical for alleviating the very conditions that contribute to the security challenges that SOCOM confronts every single day. Now, if I can, I'd like to return to a question that Senator Sullivan raised and about SOCOM's responsibility as the lead organization for countering WMDs. And I know that this responsibility was shifted over to you to ensure that we're paying enough attention to the nuclear proliferation threat and to ensure that we're synchronizing the WMD work with the counterterrorism mission so that we can prevent a terrorist group from ever getting a hold of a nuclear weapon. This mission, as I understand it, includes 3 lines of effort: preventing the acquisition of WMDs by foreign powers, containing and reducing WMD threats, and responding to a WMD crisis. And as I understand it, you seem pretty prepared to tackle the first of those, given your hard-won experience using intelligence to track bad actors over the past 15 years. WMD threats and responding to WMD crises are going to require some new skills here. General, to the extent that you can in open session, can you just say a word about what you see as the biggest challenges are in taking on this new responsibility?
Senator, absolutely. You mentioned that we are already kind of pre-established in various aspects of this mission set. I think to Secretary Whelan's earlier comment, I think that's what made it an almost natural fit for the mission to transition to us, that we have a pre-existing approach and process, kind of an ethos to dealing with trans-regional terrorism. I think there was a natural application or a kind of a fungible application to the WMD set. Going forward, though, I think even from a first blush assessment, the biggest challenge for all of us is seeing and sensing the nature of the threat in an environment that runs the gamut from dual-use technology, proliferation of nefarious items in the same stream as things that are for the good of industry and not of a nefarious use. So I really see that the major onus as we go forward is determining how we, both DOD and the interagency, see and assess the threat and obviously can enable operations to do what we need to do, whether it's disruption activities or something else. So the most daunting challenge, I think, will be of an intelligence variety in terms of assessing the threat.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I understand that the committee has asked you to prepare a report on the resources, personnel, and authorities you're going to need to carry out this mission, and I understand you're working on that. I know it'll be very helpful.
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Good. Can I ask you one last quick question, and that is Senator Sullivan asked about what you needed from us to carry out the mission. I just want to see if you could say a word about what you expect to receive from Strategic Command, who is giving up this mission in terms of personnel and funding.
Ma'am, we're actually still co-joined with Strategic Command for this mission set. So as they shifted the set specifically to us, there's still a number of correlated activities that has kept us co-joined. They did transfer an entity with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency that was part and parcel of their approach that came directly to us, and it's integral to what we're doing now. But we are also addressing what we think are the future requirements to enhance this mission.
And do you expect more transfers to occur? I'm going to quit, right, Mr. Chairman, because I'm over my time. But
I'm hopeful that within the department, not necessarily from STRATCOM, who's a busy command with a profound portfolio, but I'm hopeful that within the department that the resources that we describe will be resourced.
All right, thank you. Your job to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons is powerfully important, and we want to make sure you have the resources you need. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Whelan, General Thomas, first of all, thank you for your service to our country. In the 2014 QDR, manpower requirement for Special Operations Command was approximately 72,000. However, this number was capped at 69,000 due to budget constraints. It's clear the world is not any safer now than it was in 2014. I would suspect the current demand on your operations has not been diminished, and if anything, it has been increased. What is the current manpower requirement for Socom to meet its global requirements? Is additional force structure required?
Senator, I believe our stated requirement is the requirement. We're working to refine if there's any needed growth in the future. I am thankful, as you mentioned, that in spite of the fact that we did not receive the growth that was prescribed and validated, that we've had tremendous support from across the department in terms of augmentees and additional units that have enabled us to continue to pursue our job. So again, I'm thankful that the department has reapportioned to allow us to do what they've asked us to do.
When you were not allowed or not authorized the amount requested, clearly then you have to take on additional risk in certain areas. Where is that risk at this time? Where did you have to take on additional risk?
Senator, again, I think without getting into the details of specific locations and activities, there was curtailment in terms of some of our activities, just
Diminished operations.
Diminished operations. And then, as I mentioned, in many cases, we merely went back to the department and said, while we can't grow it or maintain it internally, might we receive additional augmentation? In almost every case, they've afforded that to us.
Recent testimony from both the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force has identified a significant difficulty in retaining qualified pilots. How is pilot retention going for Special Operations Aviation?
Senator, great question. And as Senator King asked the earlier question about recruitment and retention, I should have mentioned that we are experiencing similar retention challenges to that the Air Force and others are relative to the enticement of pilots to enjoy or to join industry. So it's something that's certainly affecting us right now, and we're trying to come up with creative alternatives or solutions to rectify that.
So you're indicating you do have the same challenges as everybody else has got on it, and
to a lesser degree, but yes, we have that.
To a lesser degree?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Does U.S. Socom need service-like acquisition authorities for the purposes of developing, acquiring, and sustaining special operations peculiar technology, equipment, and services?
Senator, we enjoy those authorities right now. Interestingly, we don't have all the authorities that the services have. They have some unique authorities. Usually folks think it's a flip on that special operations have unique authorities that enable us. There are actually some authorities that are inherent in the service that we're looking to, in the services, I should say, that we're looking to gain over time.
Would you specify?
Specifically, I can't get into the technical aspects of it.
For the record?
I will.
Would I ask? Yeah. Would you provide us with that?
Glad to do that. But again, I would also emphasize that our structure with our director of AT&L working directly for me with a streamlined relationship with our program and executive officers enables us to do some pretty extraordinary things too. So we're very well enabled. We're looking to try and enhance and have all the tools that the services have.
Cyber capabilities are critical when it comes to your operations as well. I suspect you would agree with that. Can you share with us right now your ability to maintain a cyber superiority with regard to the operations that your, let me put it this way. Clearly, you have to be able to maintain cybersecurity when it comes to your operations. Can you describe with us the challenges you got, shortcomings you may have, or needs that you may have with regard to cybersecurity capabilities?
Senator, I'd start by expressing my appreciation to Cybercom for the great capabilities that they've provided us, much like they have to other combatant commands, to first and foremost protect our infrastructure. And again, we've gotten some very, very valuable resources to do that. Similarly, we are working with them closely to enhance our offensive capabilities, the abilities, the cyber capabilities that must be integral to what our approach to the full spectrum of combat operations going forward. And again, I think we've endeavored to have some pretty nuanced approaches, again, thanks to Cybercom and others who have helped enable us.
My time has expired. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here. In preparing for this hearing today, I wanted to emphasize at the start that according to the materials I reviewed, countering Russian aggression is the #2 priority. Is that correct, General Thomas?
Senator, right now, that is the #2 priority, although I'd tell you it's being challenged by our preparations for Korea.
And as I look at the map that we have, you have, the only place you have more deployed other than EUCOM is, in fact, CENTCOM, correct? It's the #2 deployment?
Yes, ma'am, that is accurate.
You have 1,400 forces deployed to protect against Russian aggression right now?
Ma'am, working with our partners in the respective countries, we do.
And in addition to that, could you ballpark how many other American military personnel are we putting on the front lines to counter Russian aggression?
Senator, I can't speak specifically to the other complementary forces that are out there, but other than to say that we are closely linked with them in terms of pursuing.
Would it be thousands of American military in the countries on the western border of Russia?
Senator, I think you'd have to discern between those assigned to Europe and additive forces, but I don't have the specific numbers.
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is we are putting real resources out there in the military going after Russian behavior. We have determined, and you have determined, and the military leadership has determined that Russia is a problem. And I just want to emphasize that because it is frustrating to me that they try to break the backbone of democracies all over the world. And we consider it such a threat that we're putting the biggest treasure we have, which are the lives of men and women in our military on the front lines against this aggression. But there doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency about Russia. And I wanted to underline that as I began. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about today is I had a chance to review the GAO report that was recently released. It's a classified report. Have you had a chance to look at that, General Thomas?
Senator, I'm not aware of that specific report, a GAO report regarding what subject, ma'am?
Countering ISIS and its effects.
I have not seen that report, no, ma'am.
I highly recommend it to you. I think it would be very helpful to you. Since you're the key DoD element responsible for global anti-terrorism operation, several of their recommended oversight questions seem really particularly relevant to your command. For example, the problems that we're having, and we've spent billions trying to train and equip the military in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Would you agree with that, General?
We have, Senator.
And we continue to spend billions trying to do both of those things, correct?
Correct, Senator.
And I'm not sure that we are getting adequate information about how much success we've had. And I think that it would be helpful to know what steps have been taken to address the challenges to train and equip regarding the underlying factors that have caused the personnel shortages in Iraq. I mean, we continue to have insufficient numbers of soldiers even to round out units in Iraq. I think as the amount of money we're spending, it would be great if you could, you may not be prepared today, but since you all are so involved in the train and equip, it would be helpful for us to get more information about what is the problem, and are we adjusting what we're doing? Or we just keep pouring in money and still having folks walk away and still have people who we've trained and equipped show up on the other side?
Senator, I can guarantee you that for every problem that you've identified, we're endeavoring to try to rectify it. I'll work with General Votel, the CENTCOM commander. We'll make sure we get your response on the record for the concerns that you have, ma'am.
I would like I know that DoD recently revised the train and equip program in Syria, and as you are well aware, we had a number of problems, especially the first attempt at train and equip that was disastrous. Could you tell us what have been the results of the revisions that occurred in the train and equip mission in Syria in 2016?
Ma'am, there's really two different programs that I think you're referring to there. One was the one that was certainly challenged. I think we've made great strides, and I'm hesitant to get the details in an open forum in terms of the very, very capable surrogate forces that we're now leveraging in Syria and certainly with the organic forces in Iraq. But we've gone to school.
I learned about some of that when I was in Jordan.
Very good.
But what about what kind of assurances do you feel like we have now that the individuals associated with the terrorist organizations of either Syria or Iran are not benefiting from our train and equip missions?
In my particular lane, where our special operations are supporting CENTCOM activities, I am very comfortable that we are vetting them to the degree that we are very certain that they're not contributing to those particular threat organizations. But again, I'll get you more on the off.
That'd be terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Thomas, it's good to see you. Ms. Whelan, you as well. I was just back down at Fort Bragg a couple of weeks ago, and I get down there frequently. Probably they're sick of seeing me, but it's such an important part of what we do globally that I want to send the message there. I know that many of my members have asked questions about the stress on the force and op tempo, a number of those things. What I'd like to maybe spend my time on has more to do with the employment side of in my capacity as Personnel Subcommittee Chair. I know that in your opening testimony, you said we must continue to place the greatest emphasis on selecting, retaining, and empowering our people and sustaining them and their families. With 2/3 of the Socom force married, what more do you think we need to do? And the nature of their mission is such that even the relative stress level has to be higher because there's so much that the person back stateside doesn't know what's going on. What do you think we need to do more of to provide better support for the families of our Socom forces?
Senator, I mentioned, pertinent to an earlier similar question, that I'm very thankful to the committee that you've actually given us some tools that have allowed us to put our money where our intent is. I think for years our approach to family readiness was sort of be ready, your spouse may or may not deploy. We didn't necessarily build in specific resilience to that, to that eventuality. The fact that it's on the training schedule, you folks will deploy. We've also been able to leverage, as you might imagine, you described our operator experience of a lot of experience, a lot of reputations downrange. Our spouses have had the same experience, and we've been able to leverage their experience for how we can be more thorough in our preparation to build in the resilience and to deal with their problems as they occur over time. So again, I'm thankful that you've given us the means to get after this, and I think we're doing it much more comprehensively every day.
Have you given any thought to, as you're looking at the recruiting and retention side of things, are there any things that have arisen as other things that we should consider that help you retain our best and brightest? And if you can't answer that in specifics now, we would like it for the purposes of the subcommittee so that it can be instructive to our recommendations for the NDA. But if you have any off the top of your head, Ms. Whelan, are you, General Thomas?
Senator, I don't have any specific requirements right now. We're always looking to see if and when retention challenges come up, how we can mitigate those. But at the moment, I don't have any specific requests.
Senator, we don't either. However, one of the issues that we'll be looking at within SOLIC and as part of the clarified responsibilities for SOLIC oversight is this issue of retention and how we might be able to work with Socom to ensure that we have the resources we need.
We just want to make sure that we get you the tools that you need because it costs a lot of money to get these people to the level that they can be deployed, and we want to make sure that we focus on retention and valuing our men and women and their families. In my remaining time, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I know that demand is outstripping supply in terms of your ability to fulfill all the demands out there. One question that I have is whether you believe in some instances, just because of the nature of funding and the nature of the conflicts we're in, if there's some amount of what your command focuses on that would be better, the need be better satisfied by the service lines or others. In other words, if we've got a legitimate demand for additional special operations, is there a component of the demand that you're fulfilling now that could arguably be fulfilled through some other vehicle outside of SOF?
Senator, I field a similar line of question and a similar intent from our Secretary of Defense consistently, and we're looking at that very aggressively. Most recently, we completed our annual process to align forces 2 years out, so where we think Special Operations Forces are required in priority relative to the geographic combat commanders. So it literally produced a 1 through N list of what we're doing, in priority, and I plan to discuss that in detail with the Secretary in terms of here's where we could off ramp, and here's the risk or the price to be paid in terms of either cessation of missions or things of that like. But we're looking at that very very closely on how we can mitigate the pressure on the force in terms of number of missions we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Whelan.
Senator Blumenthal has arrived.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Thomas, your command now has responsibility for countering weapons of mass destruction across all of the combatant commands, correct?
Senator, we are the coordinator for the Department of Defense. That's correct.
Including use of chemical agents?
That's correct. All elements of weapons of mass destruction.
You may be familiar with a new Human Rights Watch report this week that cites a number of recent incidents, including the one April 4th that triggered our missile attack, but others in December of 2016 when there were two and another in March of 2017, all involved the use of nerve agent weaponry in Syria. Apparently, they killed at least 159 people. They reported in the New York Times. And the New York Times reported, in addition, use of other chemical agents, principally chlorine, since the April 4th attack that led to our missile strike. Are you aware of that report, and do you have information to corroborate those reports?
Senator, I haven't seen that specific report. I'm aware of all or most of those incidents, and I'm surprised you didn't mention the use of VX in the Malaysia International Airport as another egregious use of a incredibly nefarious weapon system in an open area.
I'm sure you have information about the support or complicity of the Russians in these attacks, do you not?
Senator, I'm aware of the nature of all those attacks and the actors involved. Again, probably in an open session, I'd probably be circumspect to discuss the specifics of some of the intelligence that pertains.
Would you be prepared to talk about Russian involvement in these attacks in a different setting?
Senator, I'd be glad to talk about any actors' involvement in any of these episodes.
I'm not sure exactly how to ask this question, General, and I hope you'll bear with me, but is there a reason why the American people should not know about Russian complicity and involvement in these war crimes? They are war crimes, and if the Russians are aiding and abetting them, why should the American people be denied that information?
Senator, I think the American public should know the extent to whoever is employing weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, as much as we understand and who and how that could and should be divulged to the American public.
So the rules about your providing us information in this setting are made by others, not by yourself, obviously. So I'm not meaning any disrespect to you, but I am absolutely perplexed as to why we should not make more widely known the involvement of Russians in war crimes. Only one of them so far widely reported. It led us to launch a missile strike at the base where Russians currently are stationed. They had to know about the use of sarin in that attack on Assad's own people. And so I hope that we are able to disseminate that information more widely to the American people. And I respect your position and the rules that apply to you. But you do have information about, let's call them other actors, who are aiding and abetting Bashar Assad in these criminal acts, murderous acts on his own people. Is that correct?
Senator, we're focused on everyone who is inclined to use these kind of weapons.
Is there any sort of defense that can be provided to the people of Syria by the United States against these types of weapons?
Senator, as you might imagine, the equipment required for the array of weapons that may or may not still be in the Syrian arsenal would be extensive. So I'm sure it's a daunting logistics challenge to try and provide that kind of equipment. And again, I think to your first point, disrupting the use or the employment of the weapon systems is probably the most effective thing you could do.
General, my time has expired. I really appreciate both you and Ms. Whelan being here today and your service to our nation and the service of every single man and woman under your command. Thank you very much.
I thank the witnesses. This hearing is adjourned.